welcome to this week's Natural Gardening Live with me, Josie Rainbow, your natural gardening coach. In this week's Natural Gardening Live, we're talking about the reasons I chose to garden naturally over the conventional methods that I've studied, I've brought up with, so I was kind of trained in. So I want to talk to you about the different benefits that I found, how it benefited my garden and myself as well as a gardener, but also the challenges as well, because I know natural gardening isn't actually all rainbows and butterflies. It's not all lovely. There are challenges involved in the development of it as well, and why it can be tempting, or it has been tempting for myself as well, to pick up the chemical sprays as like the quick fix, the quick solution. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. So, question for you. So let me know in the comments, what attracted you to gardening using natural resources, all natural gardening, organic gardening? What was the thing that tempted you in? My journey with natural gardening started a few years back, but I started gardening conventionally from the start. From when I started gardening, I was gardening conventionally, so I never really used excessive amounts of chemicals, but I did use pesticides and I did use weed killers. I started to study organic farming, organic gardening. I wanted to understand how this affected the soil, so how it affected the soil and the root system, the soil web, that kind of thing. So after reading up on this and realizing something very important, something that I didn't really touch on in college, and it didn't really hit home until I started reading about it and started studying it. So there's a very important thing which I'll talk to you about now. There are connections made between different aspects of your garden. These aspects support each other and make up an ecosystem. Now imagine if you've been with this, if in watching me in any way, shape or form for more than 5 minutes, you would have heard me talking about this ecosystem, because it is a very important part of natural gardening, organic gardening. So the ecosystem works hard with all aspects working together to maintain balance of harmony in your garden, helping to keep your garden happy and healthy, basically. So they all work together. These aspects are, so the soil, the plant life in your garden, and the insects and wildlife that live in your garden. Now you can break this down into more than 3, so lots of different aspects, but for speed, and otherwise I'll go through hours of talking to you, for speed, I'm going to keep it at the 3. These different aspects can maintain your garden, provide for it and support it much more efficiently than we can. All we need to do is support them, which is perfect. This means keeping, so basically keep providing food for and a good living environment, if you like, for the insects and wildlife. It includes not spraying the insects if you can, like killing them off. Maintaining the plant life in your garden. So again, not killing off weeds with sprays, and conditioning and maintaining the soil. So fairly simple, you would think. Sounds fairly simple, but that's all in theory we need to do. So over time, your ecosystem develops in your garden, making your garden more self-sustaining. This is what attracted me in, over and above supporting nature and the environment. As soon as I got wind of this idea, it all came together in my head, all worked. So over time, your ecosystem develops and your garden becomes almost self-sustaining. So with this, your workload drastically reduces. You have less to think about, and the issues, and you've got less to think about, you've got less issues to look out for, you've got less problems. So in theory, and less watering and less feeding involved as well, which is amazing. So the money, time, stress and work involved, it reduces drastically. So this will give you much more time to love gardening and enjoy the garden you work so hard to look after. The benefits that I've seen through developing the ecosystem in my garden, and how it's kind of helped me as a gardener as well. Your plants develop a natural defense, which I've spoken about in the past, but they develop a natural defense to manage pest and disease. Manage the pest and diseases more efficiently in your garden. The insects and wildlife living in your garden, the insects and wildlife living in your garden support the plants, and the plants provide food and nesting materials and things for homes, nooks, all that sort of thing, for insects and wildlife. So they kind of support each other. The plants develop a stronger resilience to pests and diseases, with a faster recovery due to the ecosystem in the soil around generally, releasing and providing more nutrients for your plants as and when they need it. So they're not waiting for you to notice that the leaves are changing colour, they're looking slightly unwell, or you think they might need it. They're to feed them. So they're getting it as and when they need it, because it's always being provided in the soil. So plants develop a stronger resilience because of this, which is amazing. So resilience being, if you think about when they get ill, they suffer it better, basically. They recover faster. They get over it, they're healthier for it, and they don't, it doesn't set them back so much when they get ill. Your plants will naturally produce more fruit and veg, or more fruit, technically, as pollinators will visit your garden much more. This is what I've noticed. You'll get more, they'll visit your garden much more frequently because you would have developed the plant life in your garden to the companion plants and supportive plants, that sort of thing, to attract them in. So you'll get far more of the pollinators in, which will in turn pollinate the flowers to produce more fruit. The soil, an asset all on its own. The soil and the ecosystem of the soil will develop and hold a variety of soil-borne organisms, the bacteria and bacteria to break down and release more nutrients for your plants. And all of these work together and basically keep your garden running. And yeah, with all this happening in the background, all you need to do is worry about conditioning your soil once or twice a year. Look out for damage, prune, and maybe water when necessary. Now, one thing I will say, disclaimer, this is the challenging part, if you like. This doesn't happen overnight. So with years of me spraying and having no real number of wildlife insects, beneficial insects of any kind really in the garden, just maybe the passing bees and butterflies that pass through and the odd bird, I had no real number of wildlife or beneficial insects visiting or living in the garden. I was technically starting from scratch with this whole thing. So this is when it was tempting to get the spray bottle and kill the aphids on my roses, caterpillars and things, all the insects and things that were causing problems in my garden, to get the spray bottle out and kill them with the sprays off all the insects and stuff that were causing problems in my garden, instead of holding firm and understanding that if I did this, it would actually set my garden back in development and wouldn't, or the defense back in development, and wouldn't actually help me in the long run. So I was kind of expecting miracles overnight to start with, which isn't a good way to look at it. But if I just held on, did what I can, used natural, if any kind of sprays, used the natural sprays and tried to manage it myself, this would then help to support the natural defense that your garden would build. So as I say, it doesn't happen overnight, and don't expect miracles, because it does take a bit of time, a few seasons to kick in, and for your garden to understand what it needs to actually do for you or for itself. Relying on you for that long, or for me for that long, it takes time for it to develop its own defense system, if you like. So the birds coming in, the insects living in the garden to start supporting. My garden as a whole has actually learned to look after itself. So it's really great. And the ecosystem is still developing over time. It's still developing, and it will still develop as well for many years to come. So the more time I give it, the better it's going to be, the more support it's going to have for itself, the more balance it's going to maintain. So it's good. This is why I chose natural gardening over conventional gardening. I learned and studied conventional gardening, but learning about natural gardening and the way that it can support your garden, your soil, yourself as well, and nature and the environment, and knocking on, it makes it all worth it. Definitely, it's much more of a sustainable way of gardening and enjoying your garden. If you've got any questions related to starting your garden naturally, or anything related to this live, please feel free to comment below. Pick up on the comments as I see them, so it's fine. I hope that has helped you, and I will catch you next week in next week's episode of Natural Gardening Live. See you later.